SN, and happy Easter. And today we are going to do a vlog on Hal Chase and talk a little bit about 1911 and also do our cards giveaway. Despite the fact that I ordered these 3 days before the 1911 card set, the 1919 White Sox, 1906 Cubs, and the 1922 Browns are finally here. They came in the mail yesterday, so we are going to give those away today. And the way we're going to do that is we have 6 people involved, and what we'll do is take George Sisler and Ken Williams cards, and Sisler will be 1 to 3, get the result on his card. Williams 4 to 6, the result will come off his. Excuse me, allergies. And whoever gets the best result will win the set of cards, and the results will be ranked in order from strikeout, ground out, fly out, walk, single, double, triple, and home run. And if there's a tie after one round, we'll basically just keep going until there's a sudden death situation. So that's where we are. And just get set up here. Okay. So for the giveaway, we'll start a little bit on Hal Chase and get back to the giveaway after we do a little bit of introduction there. And basically Hal Chase was probably one of the darkest characters ever to play the game of baseball. His talent was unquestioned. However, if you're familiar at all with his story, you know that he was constantly involved in scandals throughout his career, mostly to do with gambling, fixing games. He was also implicated as being a key player in the 1919 World Series fix. Part of that you could possibly tie back to his time with the White Sox in 1914. I think that's probably not extremely realistic, but Hal Chase, native of Northern California, born in 1883, and kind of ignored his family's wishes to go to college, and he fell in love with the game of baseball. By all accounts, he did love playing the game. It was some of the other things that went with it that made him a unsavory character. And the thing with Chase is he was one of those people that makes such a habit of telling lies that you kind of get blurred. The line between what's true and what's not true kind of blurs itself with people like Chase, to where he either can't differentiate himself what is true and what's a lie any longer, or they all run into one thing, and if he says it, if it comes out of his mouth, it's true. And I think the reason he was allowed to exist so long in the major leagues, almost 9 full seasons with the Highlanders/Yankees, and then bouncing around other teams, White Sox, Reds, and finally ending up with the Giants, is that he had a gift of charm as well, if you will. He was able to, very cocky, easygoing, yet at the same time very persuasive, and again, probably related to the personality trait where he had the ability to convince you that what he was saying was true, even though it completely wasn't, because he in his heart believed it was true. So another thing I think that empowered him was during his time with the New York Yankees, Highlanders when he started. They were owned probably by 2 of the most unscrupulous figures that have ever owned a professional baseball team, and that's Big Bill Devery, William Devery, and also Frank Farrell. And Farrell made his fortune. He was known at one point as a pool hall king of New York, and made his fortune with pool halls, had up to 250 of them, also different various gambling dens and vices around the city. And Devery came into contact with him due to his role as a police captain and later as New York's first police chief. And as a captain, Devery started a habit of crafting the various establishments of ill repute within his precinct. And he was actually able to take that money and build a fairly substantial real estate empire, investing the money he'd gotten through the ill-gotten gains through his grafting and corruption. And it was through this mechanism that Devery and Farrell formed a bond. And when time came to relocate a team to New York in 1903 due to the collapse of the Baltimore franchise, Van Johnson was looking for owners to run the club, buy the club, bring it to New York, because he felt a big city presence was needed to further establish the American League and also to compete with the Giants. And Devery and Farrell were actually the two choices of basically two last resort choices. He didn't get a lot of interest. They ended up buying the club, I think, for $18,000. And Johnson's distaste for them was such that even when they signed the Articles of Incorporation, those two weren't even present. And during the time they ran the franchise, leadership kind of trickles down, and they constantly took Chase aside in disputes. There were a total of 6 managers, including Chase, during his time with the Yankees. A couple of well-respected managers in Clark Griffith and George Stallings. And basically Chase, at every turn, did his best to undercut his managers, starting with Griffith. And after Griffith was removed, Kid Elberfield, a teammate of Chase's, took the team over for a year. Those two didn't get along at all, and Chase, basically the same scenario, constantly trying to undermine Elberfield. And again, the owners being corrupt, and Chase kind of been a bird of a feather, and also very much involved in the New York gambling scene, they always sided with him. And when he was gone, George Stallings came in, and Stallings, who would later go on to lead the 1914 Miracle Braves, the first team since 1901 to win the pennant and World Series that did not reside in either Pittsburgh, Chicago, or New York in terms of National League entries. So Stallings was a very good manager, knew the game, and Chase just didn't really like his discipline. So got him run off. Chase himself took over the team for a year before it was decided that wasn't a good fit. And then Frank Chance was brought in for the Cubs, and Chance, like Chase, was not a very good person, kind of a bully, but again a very strict disciplinarian, and those two did not get along either. And Chase made it a pretty much an annual thing to either hold out or threaten to jump the team, and did so several times. It was often hard to coerce him to come from California, where he would play in the winter, where he liked playing. And the New York Highlanders constantly had to capitulate to his desires, and again, Devery and Farrell seemingly always took up for Chase, and that boded well in his favor. And it's strange that someone who was so self-centered and under a shadow of suspicion constantly for his behavior in ball games would come back, and as an example, I believe it was 1907, he came back from a holdout and was actually greeted with a loving cup from his teammates, and praise was showered on him constantly. Babe Ruth, Walter Johnson, Cy Young are among 3 greats who proclaimed Chase the greatest defensive first baseman and potentially the greatest first baseman ever to play the game, or that they played with or saw in their lifetime. And says something for his skill. Unfortunately, those skills were overshadowed by his personality and really by a dark soul. And people just tended to overlook that, one, because he was so charming, and 2, because he was such a great ball player. He had 2 failed marriages. His son was estranged. And there are stories of Chase. He was a notorious playboy. He would often check into a hotel in New York City under an assumed name, often checking in with a friend of his and two ladies of ill repute, shall you say. So he was involved in quite a bit of debauchery and managed to always spin that so that he came out looking okay. He additionally, despite the fact that several managers questioned his ability, and I think one of the reasons that I'll go back, one of the reasons I think he was allowed to get away with as much as he did is, if I had to compare him to a modern day ball player, I would probably compare him to Keith Hernandez with the Mets. Good solid bat, and Chase did bat over 300 if you count his stint in the Federal League 3 or 4 times. He hit a high of 347 in the Federal League. So he could swing the bat. He was productive offensively. His career average, I believe, was 283. So that compares very favorably to any first baseman of his day. And of course, his big attribute was he defensively was amazing in the field. He would get to balls that no other first baseman in the game could get to. That played in his favor, both as a tool to advance his excellence, often self-promoted, and also a tool to hide his basically his crooked plays. He could get to a play that someone else wouldn't get to and make a throw that was errant, or just get to the ball enough to knock it down but not be able to make a play. And people really didn't question a lot of those because, like I said, many players wouldn't get to those balls. So he used his fielding excellence to his advantage when it came to fixing games. He had a knack of just being able to fall inches short of fielding a hit. And it was a hit, again, that another first baseman probably wouldn't even have gotten to. So when he missed it by this much, or it ticked off his glove, people wouldn't question that. Or if he fielded a throw from an infielder, he had a knack of being able to field throws in just a way that it made it look like the throw pulled him off the bag. He was very adept at going down and scooping balls out of the dirt with one hand, which was a feat at the time due to the equipment they had in those mitts. So being able to do that, he could disguise purposeful errors and again make it look like the error belonged to one of his teammates throwing the ball. So Chase finally kind of got his in 1918. Well, let me go back. He was finally released when the ownership of the Highlanders changed. Devery and Farrell, really, they never put anything back into the club, which was why the team was so mediocre during their time owning it. And when they finally did sell the club, you saw how the club continued to evolve and grow under basically Colonel Rupert. So when he was gone, he went to the White Sox for a year, and there he had contact with Eddie Seacott for 1 season. And he was really the only regular outside of Ray Shaw and Buck Weaver that were present then when Chase was with the White Sox. So there could have been a tie-in with Seacott and Chase when the 1919 situation came up. From there, he went on to play with Christy Mathewson, jumped to the Federal League, then went on to play with Christy Mathewson in Cincinnati. And Mathewson, who was very well respected as a gentleman of the game, brought up allegations of him throwing games, even with one of his teammates, Lee McGee. And before Mathewson could testify, he was called off to basically enlist in the service, so he was unavailable to present testimony against Chase. And at the time, National League President John Heidler dropped the charges, and John McGraw then invited Chase to join the New York Giants and signed him to a contract, which is funny within itself because McGraw knew Mathewson. He had no reason to doubt his word and also respected him as a gentleman and an honest person. And again, I just think that speaks volumes of how capable Chase was of convincing people that indeed he was a upright figure. And he lasted 1 season in New York, and at the time he exited New York was after the 1919 season, obviously, and the World Series came up. He was implicated in the 1919 World Series fix and subsequently barred for life from the game. He spent a good portion of the 20s playing in outlaw leagues, actually recruited several members of the White Sox who were also barred. Buck Weaver, Lefty Williams, and I believe Joe Jackson played with Chase in some of the outlaw leagues in California and Arizona. And apart from that, he met a rather sad, predictable end. When you live your life basically conning others and using that charm to get by and manipulate people, eventually it's going to run out as you age. And that's what happened with him. He kind of really drove all the people in his life off, to the point where even in his later years, when he lived with his sister, her husband detested Chase so much that he actually built a separate building on their property for Chase to live in, and he was not allowed to go into their house. So he had, and you could say deservedly, had a very isolated and lonely existence. And shortly before his death in 1947, he did give an interview where he expressed regret and remorse for some of the things he did. But you know, it could have been sincere, it could have been just due to his living circumstances and the fact that he really didn't have anything at that point left to live for or live on. But he did die basically destitute, penniless, again in 1947, and you know, kind of the end that you would expect from somebody, and you could, I guess some people would say deserved, from somebody who lived their life basically manipulating and using others' trust to benefit himself. But it's just kind of a brief overview of Chase, and kind of segues into 1911 before we do the card giveaway. I did get the 1911 card set Friday, and one of the things I want to do with that, eventually I'll do a project, an extended project with that, but I'm going to do a one-off game, the Addie Joss All-Star Game, which was played on July 24th, 1911. And Joss, just a quick recap, right before the season started, April 3rd, he collapsed prior to an exhibition game against Chattanooga, and was later diagnosed with tubercular meningitis and died 11 days later. Joss was loved throughout the league, and the Cleveland players organized this benefit, and when I play the game I'll talk a little bit more about Joss and all that went into the game, and some of the things, some trivia I guess about him and his career. But the Cleveland players organized the benefit and solicited volunteers from the other American League clubs to form a squad to play against them. And they had to pick players at that point, and players selected, or players that volunteered actually could have made up 3 or 4 teams, so they selected the best. Chase was actually on that 1911 All-Star team, so he will be involved in that game. And some of the other American League greats, Washington actually had 4 players on the team, the most of anybody. They had Walter Johnson, Clyde Milan, their great center fielder, Gabby Street, who ostensibly came to catch Johnson, and Germany Schaefer was also on the team. Other greats, Smokey Joe Wood, Tris Speaker from the Red Sox, Ty Cobb, Sam Crawford from the Tigers, Russ Ford along with Chase from the Highlanders, and slipping my mind. Oh, Home Run Baker, third baseman from the Philadelphia A's as well. So we'll do that game, just kind of a one-off game later today to tribute to Addie Joss. And in Twist, I actually have Joss's Hall of Fame card. He obviously wasn't in the 1911 set since he passed away prior to the season, but he will actually pitch for the Indians, so I think that'll be fun, and we'll do that a little bit later. But for now, the giveaway, and again we have the 1919 White Sox, all-time great team, 1922 St. Louis Browns, and 1906 Chicago Cubs. And these are all in basic form. None of the great teams had the super advanced side, and the 1911 teams do, which is exciting to me and why I can't wait to use them in a project. And I actually wish that Strat-O-Matic would do a couple more dead ball teams with advanced and super advanced, particularly the 1908 season, which is still one of the greatest pennant races in the history of the game. You had the Tigers, the Indians, and the Athletics battling it out in the American League, and they were separated by no more than 2 to 3 games most of the last 6 weeks of the season. And then, of course, in the National League, the usual big three: Pittsburgh, Chicago, and New York. And everyone's familiar with the Merkle game that pretty much cost the Giants the pennant that year when he failed to touch second base after a game-winning hit, and Johnny Evers was able to retrieve a baseball and basically force him out at second, forcing the replay. So that would be my one request to Strat, is please make a 1908 season in advanced and super advanced. So for the giveaway, what we're going to do, as I said, we will use George Sisler and Ken Williams. And the people entered in the giveaway: Bob Bull, Manuel Christian Rivera, Alan Shaw, Gary Maurer, SMR, and Mike McAllister, friends of the channel all. So what we will do is basically roll. 1 through 3 will be on Sisler's card, 4 through 6 will be on Williams, and we will mark down the results. And again, the results in order of worst to best will be strikeout, ground out, fly out, walk, single, double, triple, and home run. So with that, Bob Bull, you are up first, my friend. And the roll is a 4-6, which is going off Williams column 1, and that is a ground out. And again, if we have anyone who's tied in terms of results, we'll continue until we have only one. Manuel Christian Rivera is next, and 6 and 11, that goes to column 3 on Williams' card. That is also a ground out. So tied there. Looking for our first hit, Alan Shaw. 1 and a 6 on Sisler's card is also a ground out. So we have a 3-way tie. Basically, at this point, anybody reaching base could potentially win these cards. So here we go. Gary Maurer, and that's a 6 and a 2 off Williams' card, and that is a fly ball. So a fly out puts Gary in the lead. SMR is up next. And 1 and 11, that's off Sisler's card. That will be a ground out. So Gary Maurer, barring what Mike McAllister gets on his roll, you are set to be the winner. And that is a 6-2. And that's going to go column 3, so that is a fly out. So after one round, we have a tie between Gary Maurer and Mike McAllister for the 3 all-time great teams giveaway. So it will come down to this, a sudden death roll-off. So again, using George Sisler and Ken Williams, 1 to 3 is Sisler's card, 4 to 6 is Williams. This is Gary Maurer, and that is a 6-9. So that will be column 3, and that's a split chance single line out. So 1 to 7 will be a single, and 12, that is a line out. That counts as a fly out for tracking purposes. So now Mike McAllister, chance to win the cards, a 5 and an 8. That's column 2 on Ken Williams' card, and that is going to get it done in style. Split chance home run double. So let's just make it official. And 10, that is a home run, which is 1 to 17. So there you have your winning result. So congratulations to Mike McAllister. I will be reaching out to get in touch with you later, or actually right after this video, and get a mailing address, but you will be obtaining the, again, 1919 Chicago White Sox, 1906 Chicago Cubs, and the 1922 St. Louis Browns. So that's it for our vlog on Hal Chase 1911 and our card set giveaway. Hope you enjoyed that. Glenn, how are you doing? And Gary, glad that you made it to watch, and a home run is the way to win in style. That came down to a sudden death playoff between yourself and Mike. Appreciate you getting in on the drawing. So again, tune in later. We'll be doing a live replay, one-off replay of the 1911 Addie Joss Benefit All-Star Game, the actual first All-Star Game in Major League history, though it's not officially recognized as one. It was the first time in season a team of All-Stars actually participated against another American League franchise. And Itinerant Hobbyist, thank you very much. Good morning, happy Easter to you. And I think that'll be a fun game. I'm going to play as played lineups, with the exception, if you're here at the beginning, I mentioned that the one exception will be Addie Joss. I do have the Hall of Fame set of cards, which Addie Joss is in. He is the only player in Major League history that actually had the 10-year service rule waived for entering the Hall of Fame. So he will be pitching in his own benefit game and pitching for the American League All-Stars. Each pitcher will go 3 innings. We'll see Smokey Joe Wood, Walter Johnson, and Russ Ford to close it out. So again, I'll get that up, get that started a little bit later on this morning. And until then, again, appreciate everyone's support. Thanks for watching, and happy Easter again to everybody. And until next time, keep rolling for the fences. This is Anthony with BBSN, and we'll see you later. Bye.